All right, hello everybody. We are here for training and we are actually recording and putting together the meeting for the discovery meeting. Now, this is utilizing the LEAP module and being able to use that as your opportunity to help other people learn about, well, if it's right to do business together. So it's important to know that we do not need to use this every single time. We can, and this is a great tool to display what we're doing, but also I've given presentations or discovery meeting presentations without anything at all, just a conversation. So it's important to know that you can do that. All right. But this is a great tool, and if you have somebody in your office or if you have your computer in front of them, or you can log on to the internet on their system, that's great. When you're in the LEAP module, you want to go to Financial Stories, and you want to go to presentations, and this is the model for financial success. Now in the beginning of the meeting, before we start going into this too in depth, the big thing we want to introduce people to is the idea that we are simply trying to find out if this is something that's going to make sense for us to do. Does it make sense for us to work together? So the first thing I tell people is, what we're going to do today is I want to learn as much about you as possible. I want you to learn as much about us as possible. And together we're going to ask some questions and find out if it makes sense for us to work together. If we go through this and it doesn't make sense, that's perfectly fine. But if we go through this and you say, man, this is a great opportunity, or this seems like something that we could benefit from, then two things will probably happen. One, you're going to give yourself some homework, because that's going to be the time where we want to get as much information as possible, because what we do is we gather information to find out about you, to see where you're at, so we can tell where you want to go. But the other thing is, if you like this and you think this is a great opportunity, the one thing we may ask, and we'd like to ask at the end, is if you know of other people after we go through this process that could benefit from the same information, well, we'd like to know who those people are. All right. So to begin, most of our clients have the same desire. I mean, what they do is they want long-term wealth. They want to make sure they have an income in retirement that they don't outlast. One of the biggest fears that people have nowadays is, what happens if I end up living too long and I outlive my money? But we also know that there's going to be some eroding factors. One of the big ones is taxes. So they want to have as little taxes or tax exposure as possible. But a lot of my clients also want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to leave a legacy of some kind. It's not just for themselves. A lot of people want to make sure that they can live their retirement, but they also want to be able to leave something for their loved ones, or a charity, or both. And they want to do this with low cost and low risk. Sound good? But there's a problem. And the problem is, by the time we get together with people, they have met with different people. That's just telling us we have a meeting starting, which has already started. Anyways, they want to meet with different people, or they have met with different people at different times, under different economic circumstances, and what they do is they end up creating a financial junk drawer. And what happens is all the stuff ends up becoming disorganized, uncoordinated. Nothing is working together. It's inefficient and ineffective and hard to manage. So what happens is they have this process that really isn't a process. It's just a bunch of stuff, and they hope and they pray that everything works well, but there's no clarity. So what we do is we clean up the junk drawer. But we also help people realize that there are rules in this game. And it's a wicked game. Because believe it or not, the financial services industry, the IRS, and the banking industry really don't have your back when it comes to financial planning. What they want is they want your money. They want it systematically, so they want to set up a payment schedule, whether it's a yearly tax burden or taking taxes out of your paycheck on an ongoing basis, or you make monthly payments with interest payments. So they want your money on a continuous basis, systematically, and they want to hold it as long as possible and give you back what? As little as possible. Think about taxes. Throughout the entire year, they're taking money out of people's checks or do quarterly payments or whatever, and then they hold it until the end of the year or April 15th or whenever you do your taxes. And what do they give you back? They don't give you back any interest, do they? So our job is to help educate people on the rules of the game. That's simple. Now, typically, right before this screen, we go into the color questions. So this is where we go, this is what we do. This is basically our job is to gather information and learn about you. And if you don't mind, I have a couple questions. And this is when you go through the color questions. Now, you would have the color questions already out, unless you have them memorized. Then you just start asking the questions and say, I have a few questions for you. And you go through them. It's important for us to get the color questions. And at the end of the color questions, what we want to say is, well, first of all, thank them for giving the information to you. But then we want to say the reason why it's important for us to get this, if we decide to work together, the wording here is very important. If we decide to work together, I'm going to ask you to give me some information. We gather data. But that's all black and white stuff. It's going to be investment information, banking, insurance, things like that. But what you just gave me now is the color questions. This is the reason why we're going to do what we do. This is the purpose behind the plan. So thank them again, and then you go on. And now, typically in the color questions, you would have asked, have you worked with a financial advisor before? And ask them what that experience was like. And unfortunately, typically, if they have worked with a financial planner, they're going to say that they used a math-based approach. And they used that math-based solution to hopefully come to some magical nest egg that'll be there in the future. And if they say that they did use a math-based approach, your answer should be, well, I'm sorry to hear that. The reason why is because money is not math, and math is not money. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, if math were money, we would say 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? But in our world, in reality, I think I think money, I should say, works a lot more like oranges. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if math worked for everything, I would say maybe we get together for our orange planning seminar session, and I would say, well, today I'm going to give you 2 oranges. Then next week, I'm going to give you 2 more oranges. And then next year, let's get together for our annual orange review, and let's discuss your annual orange review. And 2 plus 2 should equal 4, right? Unfortunately, during that time, maybe you got hungry and you ate an orange. Or maybe, maybe you have kids and one of your kids comes up and says, hey, you know what, Mom, Dad, I really need an orange today, and they end up giving them an orange. Or maybe somebody during the year said, you know what, you did too well. I need some of those oranges for myself. We call that the IRS. Or we get together and a year from now, we end up having, well, oranges not looking like they did when we first started because of Well, because time has made them look different. They eroded. That is what money is like. In reality, 2 plus 2 can't equal 4 because during that time, we may have something called inflation that takes away. And I know that the government says that inflation is at 1.2 or 1.3% or something like that. Unfortunately, they no longer use things like gas, food, cost of a mortgage, taxes, or health care in their equation when they are doing the calculations for inflation. But inflation is one of the biggest eroding factors in people's financial plans. Then we got another thing called taxes. Taxes, believe it or not, may go up down the road. Because right now, over 50% of our country is receiving some kind of a social promise, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, whatever. By the time baby boomers are fully into the system, we're going to have more people over the age of 65 than are under 19. We are going to have over 75% of our country receiving some kind of social promise. Well, as our country becomes more dependent, do you think taxes might go up or go down? Probably have to go up, right? We also have market fluctuations, market risk. We have law changes. We also have lawsuits. You know, the average lawsuit today is $1.7 million, and it's filed every 37 seconds. Do you think maybe we should protect some of your assets to make sure that you have them in the event of a lawsuit? There's technology changes. You know, what I'm talking to you on right now was not in my financial game plan 10 years ago. There's also unexpected life events. Have you ever had something that happened in life that you didn't expect and it cost you a boatload of money? Well, if your financial plan doesn't have a plan for that, it could take away some of your retirement. We also have fees and consumer financing. We've gained clients simply because of the amount of fees that we educated them on that they were paying just for somebody to hold their money. So, I know this is going to be kind of a shock, but some of our clients want to increase their standard of living. Most financial plans tell you that you're going to need less, spend less, want less, and have less burden and taxes and everything else in retirement. Man, I wish I had that crystal ball, and I'm glad that my clients don't want mediocrity in retirement. And then, of course, we also have planned obsolescence. What that means is just because things didn't change technologically doesn't mean they don't break. So what happens in life, these are some of the eroding factors that we help our clients overcome, because it's important to not just have a math-based, interest-only approach. You have to have a plan, and a plan will outperform a product any day of the week. Does that make sense? Well, here's the solution. Like I said, the solution is a plan. It's a process. First of all, we start with a game board. You will have your own personal game board where everything that we gather data-wise fits into. It's coordinated. It measures performance. We can see where people are out of balance, where they may have too much, and where it needs to be tweaked or reduced. If there's a game board, well, there's probably a rule book, right? So what we do is we help people with understanding what the rule book is. And we go through the rule book because every part of the game has different rules. And for example, auto insurance has different rules than savings accounts or 401ks. So we just go through what the different rules are and help people understand those rules. And what I act as? Well, I act as the macro manager. Because just because you have a game board and just because you have a rule book doesn't mean you shouldn't have somebody to coordinate it. It's kind of like an orchestra. Okay, you've got a lot of people who play different instruments, right? And they all have music. Well, if they all showed up for a concert at different times and they all pulled out different sheets of music and they just started playing whenever the heck they wanted to, well, that's going to probably not sound exactly the same as if there was a conductor helping them along with the process. And that's what we do. So the model and the objective, well, there are 4 areas that we will monitor once we gather the data. First part is protection. Now, everything in the protection model, this is the foundation. This is where we build and we start. The world starts opposite. We start with protection because if you're going to build a castle, you better have a darn good foundation underneath it, otherwise it'll break. So we look at everything. Now, I don't sell auto insurance. I don't sell homeowners insurance. I don't do any of that stuff. Some of these areas we can help our clients with. But we make sure that you have adequate protection so that when life happens, you can get through those times. You're not going to go bankrupt because of a lawsuit. Then we go into savings. This is where we make sure we create balance. What we do is we make sure that people have adequate liquid savings, and there is a specific number and a specific formula that we go through with our clients once we get to know them. But the goal here is to not get too overfunded, but to have enough to weather, well, life. Because when life happens, sometimes the best way to get through that is to have cash. This also allows us to take advantage of opportunities when they come up, and also create leverage when we look at things like 401ks, Roths, IRAs, things of that nature. We want to make sure that this is balanced, but again, balance is the key. So we start with protection, we build savings, and if we do that right, quite frankly, growth happens. We don't need to take a lot of risk if we create efficiency in the other areas. And believe it or not, most of our clients, if they could, would prefer not to risk everything they had just to hope that they can get to a specific goal. They would rather have a plan that weathers the storms if life happens or if the markets go up and down and all that. But the world starts here. And typically, the world starts with growth. Let's shoot for the highest rate of return. Let's do a sacrificial offer to savings, and with whatever money is left, we'll buy the cheapest insurance we can and hope we don't have a problem. And ironically, when they do that, and when life happens, they create debt. Isn't it interesting that the same financial institutions that manage your 401k and the same financial institutions that give you a home loan, they also have credit cards. Yeah, they set you up for a failure moment so that when life does hit the fan, they're there with open arms to help you out with a high interest credit card. So what we do is we teach people a process that creates success for them as opposed to the financial services industry and the financial institutions. What we do is we manage debt. We go from bad debt to good debt to better, and when it's appropriate, when it's appropriate, better debt to none. And what that does, that creates cash flow. And when that creates cash flow, what we're doing is we're giving less money to the places you would rather not give it anyway. And when we do that, now we've created efficiencies that go back into your model without costing you anything more than you're spending right now. So if you could create a better situation without it costing you anything more than you're spending, wouldn't that be a better plan than just throwing a bunch of money at the market and hoping it does what you want it to do? Now, in your world, you already have probably some, if not all, of these people. You have real estate people, bankers, life insurance agents, legal advisors, money managers. That's me. Auto and home agents, business partners, and so on. You may have some of these advisors in your world. And what I need to know is, as we go through this process, is who those people are. Because it is important for me to work in concert with them or educate them on the things that they should know that I know to help your world get better. But what I do is I collect the data, we fly at a 30,000 foot level, and I look at all those different areas to make sure if there's something we could tweak or something that your tax planner should know about that he or she doesn't. In fact, I sit down with clients all the time and I talk to their tax professionals, and for the first time they're like, "Man, I never heard of what you're doing. That is great. Is there any way that we can do that with other clients?" It's amazing. And again, it's not that they're bad. Sometimes they're great tax professionals, but what we do is we just help them be better. Even if a person has a financial planner or an investment person who does the investments, what we do is we work in concert with them to make what they're doing better. So what we do is we just gather the data and find out where we can create opportunity in the areas you already have. So what we do is we simply discover. We gather the data, we find out the areas that should be tweaked in a person's world. We then help them identify those different areas. We then put it on the model. Now, when we go through this and we identify the different areas, it's really up to the person if they want to do anything or not, or what they want to do. All right. But then when we visualize it, we put it together in a model. We show you your specific opportunities, your specific goals and your dreams and everything else in the areas that we can manage and maximize. Then we decide what strategies to implement. And then what we do is we put it into place and we achieve financial success. Now, believe it or not, as we go through this process, the beautiful thing is every time we get together, we identify the different areas. Because again, life happens and life changes and life can alter the plan. But that's okay because you have a plan. If you have a plan, it allows you to weather those storms. Does that make sense? And then we visualize, implement, and achieve. So again, the question I ask you is, if we can go through this process, if we could gather some data, and by getting this information, I can help you identify the areas of your world that could create success, and that can be done without costing you anything more than what you're spending right now. Does it make sense to move forward and see what that process is like? I think just wait for the answer. Now, sometimes people will ask, well, that sounds great, but how do you get paid? Well, that's a great question. Usually money. First of all, most of the time, now there are a few exceptions, like with college planning, or if we have to pull in a professional or like a CPA or an attorney for specific situations. But as far as the process we just discussed, we don't charge any fees. We'd rather have somebody else pay us than you. So what happens, we don't charge any fees, but when we do move money around and we move it to different areas, those places will pay us a commission. Okay? Again, we'd rather have them pay the commission than you. Now, one question I do have for you, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. The type of service that we do is typically an ongoing process. Some of our clients love that. Some of our clients would rather have it more, what do you want to call it, more annual. Typically, we try to get together with our clients on a quarterly basis just to find out where they're at and where they want to go. And it could just be a phone call, it could be whatever, but I do realize that some people's schedules won't allow for that. So my question to you is, what type of service do you expect and what would you prefer from somebody like myself? And let them answer. So service is important. Now, on review, when we review, I do want to ask you one other question. How important is it for you to understand the process? What I mean by that, are you the kind of person who wants to know what time it is, or would you like to know how the watch is made? And I ask you that because sometimes I go into a lot of conversation, a lot of explanation. I get really passionate and in depth about the information, and I can see my clients' eyes are glazing over, like, "Oh my gosh, what the heck is he going on about? I don't care. Just let me tell me where to write the check." It's important for me to know up front how in depth you want us to go. So, what is review important to you as far as in depth? And let them answer. Let them dictate to you how you want to be served. And whatever they answer, always let them know that, hey, if we go through this and you ever want more clarity on something, please do not hesitate to ask. I'd rather have you come to me than go somewhere else. And last but not least, remember we talked about in the beginning, we we don't do any advertising, or we do very little advertising, at least any that works. Most of the people that we talk to are referrals from other people. Okay. Or I know they're accountants or they're CPAs and they refer me to their clients. If we go through this process and you like the process and you agree it's something that is just different in a good way than what you expected, would you mind letting us know other people who could benefit from this same information? Okay, good. Because we get paid two ways, commissions and introductions. That's it. Well, that's great. Well, that is our process. What I'd like to do now is set up a time to get together for the data. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a questionnaire. And on this questionnaire, and you go through what the questionnaire is, this is where we get the black and white information. And as complete as you can get it is going to be best, because the more complete the information here, the more complete your model is, and the better chances we have for success. So I'd like to go give you the questionnaire, but then also set up a time where we can get together to pick that up. And always set the time, and usually make it about a week or 2 weeks away. It's typically what you're going to want to do for that data gathering. But that is the discovery meeting presentation for LEAP, and I thank you so much for joining us.